Yo, what is up everybody, it's Jay the Great here, and today I want to talk on a topic that I believe is quite misunderstood by a lot of individuals within the Naruto fandom, and as you can tell the title, that is, were the Edos actually nerfed in the war arc? So, the Edo Tensei, or Reanimation Jutsu more specifically, is far more complex than people realize, and because of that, again, I wanted to kind of touch up on this topic, and of course answer the question of were the Edos actually nerfed or not during the war arc. So to start from the top, starting out with the Reanimation Jutsu's history, we all know Tobirama Senju was the founder of this jutsu. The version he utilized was a more rudimentary version, meaning the Edos were weaker. And then as history went on, it would then be improved upon by Orochimaru. We saw that version on display during the Konoha Crush arc when he battled Hiruzen, and we see the Edos, specifically Hashirama Senju and Tobirama Senju, stronger than the Edos that were utilized by Tobirama, as again, it's stated that Orochimaru improved upon this jutsu. We then see a quote-unquote nearly perfected version later on when Kabuto uses it in the war arc, right? And this is the version we're going to be mostly discussing in the video, and we're going to discuss how exactly functions. We're going to discuss how strong these Edo Tenseis actually are in comparison to their prime versions and whether they're nerfed or not. And we're just going to get a clearer understanding of how the Reanimation Jutsu works for this specific version. So we have a very telling statement by Madara when he's in Edo, in which he says essentially that Edo Tenseis are immortal and have infinite chakra, right? So what does it mean exactly with him saying the Edo Tenseis are immortal, besides the very fact that they can't die, right? Which is the semantic definition of immortal. Well, they can't feel pain, at least when their will is removed by the user. An example is when Nagato's will was removed by Kabuto when combating Itachi, Naruto, and Killer Bee. We see him basically tank damage and have no reaction physically to any damage inflicted upon him, meaning his pain receptors are either non-existent or simply turned off. And it seems the Reanimation Jutsu has this effect on individuals. Not to mention that the Edo Tenseis in this version have regenerative abilities, meaning if you blow off their arm, for example, it will simply just come back and regenerate. Of course, there are exceptions to this, such as the True Seeking Orbs, which negate all things for the most part. All physical attacks are essentially useless against a reanimation, right? So that's what immortal means. It means they don't feel pain. It means they regenerate from even mortal wounds, or which would be considered mortal wounds if alive. And another thing I want to add on top of that is that it seems when you are reanimated, you are immune to any previous illnesses you may have had during your time as a shinobi when alive. An example is Itachi. Itachi had a terminal illness that hampered his ability to reach his full potential, and hence he never really did reach what would have been his prime. But when he was reanimated, there was no indication or sign of that. He was able to battle whoever he had to battle without that hampering his ability to use his abilities and use his power, right? So it seems when he was reanimated, he is immune to that illness or is simply removed, right? However you want to call it. Now, I want to be specific because Nagato, his mobility was still hampered, right? He had a physical limitation when alive. When he was reanimated, that was still the case. We see Itachi carrying him on his shoulder or kind of aiding him when they're heading to the battlefield, right? So that isn't included in this sort of reanimation amplification. It seems physical, externally caused limitations are carried over when reanimated. So that's what immortal means, right? For the most part, those are the specificities that come with the term immortal. It's not simply, oh, they can't die. There's more to that. There's more complexities to the functionality of these reanimations. Now, let's get into the infinite chakra aspect. What does that mean? Well, many believe that that means reanimations can infinitely and continuously span move jutsu forever. That's not the case. The way their chakra networks work is they can be depleted of chakra, but they have this infinite passive regeneration of it. So an analogy would be someone having a firearm, right? Emptying that firearm, and as soon as they cease to use it, it would just automatically refill to its fullest extent. Right, so that's essentially how the chakra networks of the reanimations work. They can run out of chakra in the midst of using a jutsu, but as soon as they cease to use that jutsu, their chakra network or chakra tank, whatever you want to call it, would simply just refill to its max immediately. Right, so they have that passive regeneration no matter how many times they use a jutsu, but again, they can't infinitely spam one. And we can simply just look at the narrative itself, the empirical data available. We never see that for any Edo Tensei, not Madara, not Itachi, not Nagato, none of them. We never see, for example, Itachi spam Amaterasu infinitely. We never see Edo Madara spam, Susanoo slices infinitely, nothing like that. There seems to be limitations in the midst of using a jutsu. But again, chakra is simply just refilled as soon as those jutsus are ceased to be used. Right, so that's what infinite chakra means. I definitely wanted to touch up on that one, especially because again, many believe that an Edo Tensei could simply just infinitely spam a jutsu eternally, which is not the case. And again, we see that empirically. There is no cases of that. So that's the functionality of the Edo Tensei. But now let's get into, are they nerfed? Are the Edo Tenseis nerfed in the war arc? Well, the answer to that question is not black and white. What I mean by that is Edo Tenseis are not built equally. So we have the general case, right, which I believe would apply to someone like Togarama Senju, who we actually have a statement from, right? He says we are virtually at full power. Virtually at full power can safely be said to mean anywhere from 80 to 90%. I believe most people would agree with that. So when he was brought back to virtually full power, meaning yes, there is a slight nerf. And I would say safely that his case can be applied to the general population of the reanimations. Most weren't tampered with by the user when summoned. An example of an Edo Tensei actually tampered with by the user, i.e. Kabuto, was Madara. We see him explain this to Madara when Madara is reanimated and he's speaking through Mu, the second Tsuchikage. He says, I took special interest in you because of the power he possesses, because of the lore he had, and he actually was given the Renegon. Right, and we know Edo Madara in his prime, such as when he battled Hashirama, did not possess that tool yet. He didn't gain that ability till later on in life due to hampering with Hashirama's cells, right? So Kabuto not only reanimated Madara to his prime physical age, but gave him tools he didn't have till later on in life, such as the Renegon, such as Hashirama's cells, right? So he can be said to be stronger than his physical prime was. His physical prime again was around the time he fought Hashirama. That was his physical prime, because again, when he received the Renegon or awakened it, he was already an old man. He was withering away and had some sort of technological life support connected to him, and we see that when he's talking to Kid Obito, manipulating him into becoming this villain that we all know of now, right, or later on in the story. So he is a special case. He's not part of the general population, nor does he fall into the general case of how reanimations are summoned. Again, Kabuto took a special interest in him and amplified him compared to what he was when he was in his physical prime. So the answer to his case is no. Edo Tenseis like him were not nerfed. In fact, he's stronger than when he was alive. Right, and again, this is expanded upon by Kabuto himself, and we have other cases as well. Again, going back to the idea of terminal illnesses being removed or bodies becoming immune to them, we can go to Itachi's case. Itachi didn't have a physical illness wearing upon him. So what did that result in? Him fighting with power near the levels of what he would have been if he never was sick in the first place when alive. So the answer to the question, were the Edos nerfed during the war arc? The answer is it depends on the Edo. It depends on the reanimation that's being questioned, that's being discussed. Now, another thing I want to discuss is, yes, in the general case, like I said previously, such as with Torama's case, the Edo Tenseis are nerfed from a power level perspective. They are nerfed in that sense. However, you can make the argument that in a general sense, they're stronger. Now, again, I'm going to be specific by what I'm saying. Yes, their power levels are lower than what they were when they were alive, right? Togarama says they were virtually or close to full power, right? So the maximum power they can utilize is lower when they're reanimated compared to when they're in their prime. However, I am now making the argument that overall, these Edo Tenseis are superior to their prime iterations, and here's why. Again, one, they're immortal. They cannot take damage. They regenerate essentially instantaneously. They have an infinite passive chakra regeneration at their fingertips. Every time they use a jutsu, they regenerate with their chakra. So essentially I'm saying that Edo Tenseis overall are superior than their alive versions, right? The version of the reanimation jutsu that Kabuto used made shinobi stronger overall than what they were when they were in their prime iterations, because they can regenerate eternally, because their chakra regenerates passively eternally when they cease to use a jutsu. because it seems terminal illnesses are removed or bodies become immune to them. All these advantages that they receive essentially negates the small discrepancy in their power level compared to their prime iteration. So in a general sense, the answer to that question is no, they weren't nerfed in the war. In fact, they were stronger because they can't die, because their chakra will continue to refill as long as they stop using a jutsu, because they regenerate instantaneously. So no, they weren't. And another reason I wanted to make this video is because in debates, right, for example, in a lot of Naruto debates, it's simply presupposed that Edos are simply weaker than their prime iterations. But if you were to put Edo Itachi against Itachi when he was alive, he gets stomped. Or put even a general case reanimation against himself when he's alive. Tobirama reanimated versus Tobirama when alive. Who would win? Ask yourself that question. Who would win? My money is on Edo Tobirama. Aside from Sealing, let's remove Sealing, right? Let's remove Sealing as a win con. How would Tobirama alive even beat Edo Tobirama? He can't. He can't kill him, and he doesn't feel fatigue, right? Like I said, he eternally regenerates from basically all physical attacks. His power level doesn't dwindle. It doesn't decrease. Well, conversely, in a live shinobi's chakra and stamina does deplete. So when you put all these puzzle pieces together, it just makes sense. The Edos are simply stronger than their prime iterations. They're essentially near their full power, and that never changes. They don't fatigue. They don't feel pain. They don't run out of chakra. That doesn't deplete as long as they stop using a jutsu, right? So it really comes down to that. And again, with this video, I wanted to really shine light on the complexities of the reanimation jutsu. It's not as simple as, oh, they come back to life and they can battle for you and they don't die. It's more than that. There's more to it when comparing them to their alive iterations. There's much more to it, as a matter of fact. So yeah, folks, that's the video. I didn't even make a script on this. I just had so much to say and really wanted to touch up on this topic. That'd be a fun topic to discuss. Hope you guys enjoyed. Feel free to leave your comments down below, whatever they may be, whether you agree, disagree, whatever other thoughts you may have or recommendations. Feel free to leave them down below, and I'll catch you in the next video. This is Julia signing out. Stay classic.